Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. It's a little after 5 and we have a lot to cover. This is our webinar, Academic Writing for College, Draft Your Way to an A. This is presented from Learning Ally, the College Success Program at Learning Ally. My name is Katie Otaggio and I am the CSP Engagement Operations Manager. So I work on the College Success Program. I am a white woman with light brown hair pulled back in a low ponytail. I'm also wearing a gray shirt with a blue cardigan. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Abigail, who's going to give you a little bit of housekeeping items, and then we'll get going.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Abigail Shaw. I'm the mentor coordinator for the College Success Program. I'm calling in from my home office in Brooklyn. I'm a white woman with brown hair. It's back today wearing a blue shirt and white stripes. So just some housekeeping about this webinar. We are going to do questions at the end. So if you have anything that comes to mind, feel free you can put it in the chat, but just so you know, we'll address those questions in the last bit of our time together. And if you'd prefer to ask your question, we'll utilize the raise hand feature. And if you don't know how to get to that, I'll explain when we open it up for questions. We are going to ask everyone to stay muted during the panel discussion. And I hope that you enjoy and are able to take some things away. So back to you, Katie.
Great, thank you, Abigail. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers today. First, we have Kristen Witucki. She is our College Success Program Curriculum and Content Editor. She's also a mentor with the program, and she's going to be moderating today. Kristen has a Bachelor of Arts in English with a minor in German and certification in secondary education from Vassar College, a Master of Arts in Giftedness from Teachers College, Columbia University, a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing Fiction from Sarah Lawrence College, and a Master's of Education in Teaching Students who are blind or visually impaired from Dominican College. She has been totally blind since birth due to Kristen, I'm going to mess it up.
Microthomia.
There you go. In addition to curating resources that she hopes students will enjoy or find useful, Kristen assists in the recruitment and training of mentors and co-facilitates one of the mentor small groups. Outside of her work with Learning Ally, Kristen mentors for the Association of Writers and Writing Programs and teaches Braille for Vista Education Partners. She is the author of The Transcriber, a book for adolescent emerging readers, and also Outside Myself, a young adult novel, and several shorter nonfiction articles. She lives in New Jersey with her husband, James, her sons, Langston and Noor, and her daughter, Karuna. Next, we have Emily Vasile, who is another mentor. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education and Psychology and a Master of Arts in Teaching in Special Education from the College of New Jersey. Additionally, she has a Master of Science in Low Vision Rehabilitation from Salus University, where she is also an assistant professor of the Department of Blindness and Low Vision Studies. She is certified in elementary education and special education in the state of New Jersey, as well as a certified teacher of students with visual impairments in both New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Emily is also a certified low vision therapist through the Academy for Certification of Vision Rehabilitation and Education Professionals. Her areas of expertise include low vision rehabilitation and education of students with visual impairments. Born with a cataract in her left eye and later on diagnosed with glaucoma, Emily never let her visual impairments define her ability to succeed. In her free time, Emily enjoys hiking, yoga, and mindfulness, exploring, reading, singing and performing, and making art. Next is Maureen Hayden, another mentor. Maureen has a Bachelor of Science in Marine Biology from the University of Rhode Island, a Master of Science in Biology from Walla Walla University, and is currently pursuing a PhD in Marine Biology from Texas A&M University. Her doctorate research focuses on learning more about the impacts of plastic pollution on Texas beaches and marine life. Maureen was born with retinopathy of prematurity and has no vision in her right eye and is legally blind in her left eye. In her free time, she enjoys playing her trombone in both symphonic band and orchestra ensembles, going scuba diving on the weekends, and spending time with family and friends. She is excited to share her experiences with blind students in higher education and to empower the next generation of blind students pursuing STEM careers. And next we have Megan Dausch, who is another mentor. Megan has a Bachelor of Arts in English, Spanish, and French from Manhattanville College and a Master of Arts in Language and Literacy from the City College of New York. She is an advocate, a perpetual learner, teacher, cook, and technology enthusiast who loves to read and write. She currently teaches adaptive technology. College is often a time of challenge, transition, and joyful exploration. Megan enjoys being a part of the CSP and supporting students through their journeys in higher education. And with that, I will pass it over to Kristen.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Katie, for the bios, and Abigail for the housekeeping. Thank you to our panelists for your time and your insight today. Just a quick note before we get started, the remnants of Ida are up here, and we don't know if there will be power outages. We've been sort of informed by frantic emails that there might be, but hopefully there won't be. So if there are any interruptions, we will carry on as best we can. We hope there won't be. And with that, let's get started. I love your title, Draft Your Way to an A, since writing, as everyone knows, is usually not just writing, it's rewriting and revision and editing and all kinds of fun things that go along with writing. But I would love for the panelists to begin by reflecting a little bit on their own experiences as college students and describing the role that writing has played in their academic or professional lives. And I'll turn it over to Megan first.
Sure. Quick description. I'm a white woman wearing a gray dress with brown and shoulder-length brown hair. For me, writing has always been a passion. And as an English major, I needed to be able to write analytically and write also creatively, because I was a creative writing major concentration. So learning how to write in different styles was really important as an English major. Professionally, writing is also critical. As an assistive technology instructor and an accessibility specialist, writing critically and being able to write succinctly is really important. Writing reports, writing justifications, being able to break down concepts clearly. So writing, I think, will play a role in no matter what you do. And for me, it certainly has always played a role in my life, whether it's been writing for fun creatively or sculpting academic essays or writing professionally. Being able to communicate well is critical and always will be for me.
Thank you. Emily?
Hi, everyone. Just for a visual description, I am a white non-binary individual who has their brown hair in a bun, wearing an orange turtleneck, though I know it's still summer. The turtleneck is really thin, so I'm not overheating, and I have on thin gold rimmed glasses. As far as how writing has played a part in my life, I've always kind of approached writing as a conversation with whoever my reader is. So I think the earliest that I can remember as a college student where I felt very proud of my writing was when I wrote my admissions essay to my college, to my potential colleges to get into college. And so I've kind of always looked at writing as a conversation with whoever your reader is, which I feel like is really important and an important way to, express and develop your voice, because, when you're reading something, you're not able to hear someone's speaking voice, but hopefully their writing style and how they approach their ideas comes across and you can start to pick up on the person's voice. And so that's really, that idea has really served me well as I moved through college and graduate school, because I think that I found my own writing voice, and it comes across now when I'm writing, writing reports for clients or for students in how I teach my classes, but in also how I write academically. I've had 3 articles published this summer, which was really exciting. They were all group projects, but I think that all my colleagues could tell which pieces I wrote versus other parts, because my voice stands out as a writer. So I think that's something just to keep in mind when you're writing, but that's kind of how writing has impacted me throughout college and then in my professional career as well.
I love that about finding your own voice, no matter what discipline you're in. Maureen, would you like to talk about this?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Maureen. So I am a white Caucasian female. I have long, straight, like, I guess, dirty blonde or light brown hair. And I don't wear any glasses. So for me, writing academically has actually always been a challenge. I'm very much a math and numbers person. So for me, writing was always very difficult. And I don't think it was until I got to college that writing clicked for me because I saw its purpose in correlation to my future career. When I was in high school, I never quite understood the point of like, why are we writing about Shakespeare? Every other high school student has written about Shakespeare. But when I was in college, I really started to get those building blocks of here's why scientific writing is important, and here's how you use it to not only communicate your results, but communicate for projects that you need as a researcher. And those skills were only fostered more when I went into my master's program, as I went to a small liberal arts school. And then now in my professional, I guess, semi-professional career as a grad student, I do a lot of writing for like grant proposals to get funding for research. I do writing to communicate my science, both professionally in manuscripts and then also publicly as well, whether that be like blog posts, emails, news articles. So I think it's also important to keep in mind that professional writing isn't always what we think it is, and it's important to kind of develop your skills to communicate with all levels of audiences is what I'm coming to find.
Thank you. It's really good to hear all of these perspectives from so many different disciplines. I also forgot to describe myself, so I'll do that quickly. I am also a Caucasian woman with long hair pulled back in a ponytail, and I have a plaid shirt on, and I'm sitting here with headphones on. So back to the panel. I'd like you each to think about a writing challenge that you might have learned to overcome during college. And I'll start with Maureen again this time, and I think you kind of began to touch on this a little.
Yeah. So a writing challenge that I really struggled with in undergrad is just freezing and being really afraid of the first draft. And this is because I'm a perfectionist, surprise. So I would want to sit down with that blank piece of paper and have my first draft come out like perfectly. I'm gesturing with my hands in a large arc. But that's not how writing works. It's draft after draft after draft. And so part of the challenge for me was learning how to draft and how to be comfortable with those states of transitions. And I had a really great research writing teacher sophomore year who just taught me, if you can't write a full outline, like start with a bulleted list if paragraphs intimidate you. You know, do what you need to do to start getting your thoughts on paper and overcoming that like starting paralysis of writing and really even just starting like, I'm gonna write for 20 minutes. And guess what? You're still 20 minutes further on that draft than when you started earlier in the day. And I think that's the biggest thing I really struggled with writing is like being comfortable with those first drafts and the messiness of it all, because it's easier to work with a skeleton of a paper than a blank page.
Yeah, that's so true. Emily, could you add to this?
Sure. Oh, I apologize. I don't know if you can hear that. That is my cell phone in the other room making that horrifying alarm that's going off, probably telling me that, you know, a tornado is about to hit or something. So if I disappear, you know why.
As long as you'll blow away.
Yeah. But I think for me, so I remember in college, my freshman year, I had to take everybody had to take a writing test the summer before to like see if they could test out of writing 102. And I didn't test out of it. Like I didn't do well enough, I guess, or pass or whatever. So I had to take this writing class, which honestly, in hindsight, I think was really good because it did teach me some things about how to write. But I was under the impression that like, oh, I took this writing class, now I know how to write, this is great. And I was taking a class, it was a deaf ed class. I have my minor in deaf studies, and I was taking a class, and it was where you had to like pull two different articles or resources and kind of compare and contrast them, but then come up with these generalizations. And for whatever reason, maybe the professor didn't like me, or I don't know what it was, but I could not get her to give me a decent grade. She like either failed me or gave me like D's on every single paper, and I couldn't figure out what it was that I was doing wrong. And I remember staying up until like all hours of the night. My dad was helping me write because he used to be like an English substitute teacher at high school, and I was like, okay, I know I'm doing something wrong. And it was a really hard struggle for me. One of the things that I learned was I have problems with my tenses. So I would start writing in, you know, past tense, and then in the middle of a sentence switch to present tense. And and sometimes I still catch myself now doing it. And it's one of those things that I think over time you start to realize your own writing styles and how those kinds of grammatical things really make a difference. But anyway, so that to this day, I just remember how horrible that writing experience was, and really got me down as a writer, but also realizing that that was one person's opinion of my writing. So everybody's going to interpret your writing differently, and not to take criticism as a general statement about how you write as a person. I think that's really important. So that way, you know, you're still building, I guess along that, have other people read your work, not just one person, because everybody's going to be able to give you different feedback and different critiques. Whereas if you rely on one person, you only know how that one person thinks. So that's a roundabout way of saying, have other people read your writing.
Oh, no, it's so true. And tenses can be tricky depending on what you're reading and, you know, how you start. So definitely something to practice all the time for probably many people. Megan, how about you?
So one of the things I think I found most challenging was actually formatting, which is something, it took me a while to really understand that formatting actually can matter to sighted people. And so that was a little hard for me to accept. You know, if I maybe accidentally changed my font in the middle of my paper and didn't realize it, or I put too many spaces somewhere. I remember very well having a professor who actually lowered my grade because my spacing was off, and I was so upset. But it taught me a really important lesson, because I learned then how I could use my screen reader's commands to check and proofread. It also, you know, it also taught me that getting help, getting some visual assistance is a good thing, and that it is important to have your papers look professional and look presentable. The content is obviously critical, but you want to make sure that they're readable and that people can find the information they need in them. So that was probably the most challenging thing for me. I also, like Maureen, always felt that I wanted to get that first draft right perfect the first time. So kind of realizing that writing is a recursive process was also something that I think I learned throughout my college experience.
Yeah, it's so true. Formatting can be pretty awful when you can't see, even if you think you have got it down. So the next question will talk about writing in kind of 3 broad disciplines, and we hope this covers most people's experiences in college, that you fall under one of these. So we'll start with Emily. Hopefully she won't blow away in the middle of the answer, but what are some unique considerations that students have when they're writing in the social sciences?
Can I ask a brief favor if we could move to someone else, because I currently need to move myself to an inside location?
Yes, please do.
I'll be right back.
No problem. Be safe. All right, we'll turn that over to Maureen then. So what are some unique considerations that people have writing for, you know, the natural sciences?
Yeah, for the natural sciences, the writing's kind of flat, and it's all very straightforward. What did you find? Why did you do this paper? But in particular, the biggest consideration I have found is getting yourself what's called a reference manager. These are usually desktop apps that are free, and then you can usually pay a little bit of an extra subscription to get a backup on their internet server or whatever cloud program they use. So for example, I'm writing my dissertation right now, and I have over, like 150 academic papers that I'm referencing. And if anybody remembers putting in citations, you have to do in-text citations and the bibliography, and these change with each revision. So the nice thing about reference managers is that it keeps all of your academic files organized. You can put them into subcategories, so I can separate my papers also like in the reference manager. I can separate them based off like the chapters of my dissertation if I wanted to. I can organize them in different ways. And then there's a plugin to Microsoft Word, and it will automatically generate a citation for you based on what format you want. Now, this isn't to say you shouldn't go back and double check it though, because the reference manager is only as good as the metadata that it pulls from the PDF or the website. So you still need to check it. But I would say as far as an academic writer, using reference managers like Zotero or Mendeley or EndNote have saved me so many hours of formatting and processing like citations and bibliographies.
Yeah, so true. It's gotten much easier, although you still always need to check. Megan, what are some considerations?
And then I would just also add like descriptive headers and footers for tables and graphs is another thing very specific to science, because we like visuals. And so usually what I'll do for that is I will write a header or a footer for a table as needed. I always remember table top, figure bottom, and then have a couple cited colleagues double check my figure description just to make sure that I get all the colors synced up with the legend correctly, etc., so that it matches what my cited peers are seeing.
Cool. We'll talk about the reference managers a little more at the end too, because a question came through about spelling those. Megan, what are some considerations people have when they're writing in the humanities?
So I think one really important consideration when you're writing for the humanities is to really examine the assignment and to look at what kind of assignment your professor is asking you for. Is it an argumentative essay? Is it are you trying to synthesize information? Are you trying to explain information? You know, really look at what the assignment is tasking you to do, because there can be a great variety. Another thing that I would say is really important for humanities is close textual analysis. That was something that I needed to do really often as an English major. So knowing how to find passages in your book, whether if you have that book electronically, knowing how to navigate to different points in your book and how to potentially copy the quote that you might need to cite. Knowing also how to do MLA formatting is probably going to be really important as an English major. And I'm sure later on we'll talk about maybe where you can get some help for this kind of formatting. But knowing what kind of formatting your professor is asking you for too is really important. So always kind of checking the syllabus or the paper assignment to find out what requirements you need to follow. And just also in humanities, you know, you might come across a variety of assignments. So, you know, you might have an assignment that asks you to be a little bit more creative. You might have an assignment that asks you to be a little more analytical. So, you know, having that flexibility and also being able to kind of take on different viewpoints, I think can really help when you're writing for the humanities.
Thank you. Emily, are you with us?
I'm currently sitting in my bathtub.
Okay.
But I might need to move to the basement. Anywho,
Okay.
I do agree with both what Maureen and Megan said. I think for me, actually, it really is a combination of both. Making sure you're really reading through what the assignment is asking for. Because I can't tell you how many times I responded to an assignment realizing that I ran off on a tangent because I got excited about the prompt and then ended up writing about something that really did not answer what the assignment was asking for. So, you know, using that that prompt or that assignment as your outline, like, you know, almost like your thesis statement, but rewrite it in your own words. So that way you're able to stick to that and like check yourself, because I can't tell you how many times I would get, you know, a paper back and I'd get like a B on it and they'd be like, great paper, but the topic was this, you know? So really make sure you're, you know, you're checking what is being asked of you. And then also staying on top of, like Maureen said, those citations and how you're referencing your papers. It's really, you know, when you're in college and graduate school, I can't reinforce it enough how serious plagiarism is. I mean, to the point where it can get you kicked out of a program. So it's really important to make sure that if you are quoting or citing references, that you're doing so in whatever format your program requires, whether it's MLA or APA or any of the other citation formats. And there are tons, and I know one of the other questions we're going to be talking about is probably out there, but there are tons of different websites and sources along with, you know, the manuals themselves of how to do these citations. So it's so important to make sure that you are giving credit where credit is due and not taking someone else's work.
Thank you. We hope you can stay with us here. We'll see, but I hope you stay safe. Okay, so the next question is really about how students can find help with their writing through their colleges. And what do students need to do to prepare to get that kind of help? So Megan, can you talk about that for us?
Sure. So the Writing Center is going to be a really excellent resource for all of you when you go to college. So writing centers will be able to help answer questions, help you as you write your paper. So it's really important to prepare to go. I would say at the beginning of the semester, it is a good idea to know how to contact the Writing Center, how to get in touch with them. And then when you do actually go, have some questions in mind that you might need help with. You know, if you know you're having trouble with your formatting, for example, you know you're having trouble with MLA, or you're really struggling with the thesis statement. You know, if you have some questions that you want to get answered, definitely, you know, bring those up when you go and make your appointment. But the writing tutors will really be great support for you, and it's always good, no matter where you are on your writing journey, to get others to read your work. Also, another possible resource is to speak with your professors early, and they might be able to guide you and give you support through the writing process, and just, you know, let you know if you're on the right track with your paper. And I would say for both of these, when you go to the Writing Center or you go meet with your professor, you know, make sure you're prepared. Bring your paper in whatever format you're comfortable reading it in, whether it's your laptop with your screen reader, your note taker, so that you can, you know, follow along as the person is going through the paper that maybe you've emailed them ahead of time. So I think, you know, the Writing Center is a really important campus resource.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go to a hypothetical student. I called her Joe student, J-O student, and maybe I called them Joe student. It's the night before paper is due, and Joe student finally got around to working on it. So besides some comments on time management, which we can save for another webinar, what's your favorite online resource that maybe she could use to improve the paper, check formatting, or something like that? Emily, would you like to start that one?
Sure. So depending on so I'm now in the basement also, by the way. Gotcha. My background is a storage cabinet. So one of my favorite sources is citationmachine.net. It used to be free, and I think for the most part you can still use a lot of the free resources, but then they'll say, you know, like, please watch this 30-minute video before you can, or sorry, not 30-minute, 30-second video before you continue this, you know, using this resource. But it's a great way to not only format your citations, like it'll let you manually type in, you know, all the information to create a citation for you, but it will also, if you just put in like the URL, it will automatically fill in all of the pieces of information that it has in the system of that citation. So it's a great way to kind of just help you get started if you're struggling to figure out how to do APA citations. My other favorite website is called EasyBib for creating the bibliography. Same kind of premise, really helps you to kind of format citations. Citations can take a really long time, especially if you're relying on just using the manual and you have to look up each type of, resource that you have. So those two websites really are my favorites for quick and easy ways to create your citations so you're not faulted for not including that information in your paper.
Thank you. How about you, Maureen?
For me, depending on your college or university, you may be using eCampus or Canvas. And a lot of the times, if professors are having you turn in assignments online, there's a tool called turnitin.com. What a lot of students don't realize on these platforms or desire to learn is that you can usually upload your essay like before actually clicking submit and have Turnitin run a scan before you submit your final paper to look for the percentage of plagiarism, or if you're missing a citation, or if there's a problematic area in your paper. So it's not just for the professor or for your instructor to see, it's also for you to see as well. So if your school does use Turnitin, I would make use of that. And then this is a low-tech way if it's the last minute, but read your paper out loud to yourself. Sometimes you catch interesting grammatical errors when you read it out loud.
So true. Megan, how about you?
So one of my favorite online resources is the Purdue Online Writing Lab. They have a ton of resource guides and information about how you can write papers, how you can structure them, format them. It's a really great resource. Another resource I would recommend that may help avoid the situation that Joe is in of writing their paper last minute is the University of Minnesota assignment calculator. And what you can do there is you can put in the type of assignment that you're writing, whether it's a paper, like a speech or a lab report or whatever it is, and it will help you, and you put in the due date, and you can, it will break down the assignment for you and let you know when you should accomplish each step of your assignment by. And another resource that you might enjoy, there are several of them out there. There are thesis generators. And you can kind of plug in the topic. They'll ask you some questions. So if you're having trouble coming up with a thesis statement, you can play around with some of these thesis generators, and you can potentially, get an idea of what you might want to say. Another thing you might find useful is just when you're checking over your paper and trying to make sure structurally everything flows, is if you're a JAWS user, you can use the skim reading tool to read the first and last sentence of every paragraph. So that can kind of help you get an idea of how your paragraphs might flow. So those are just a few options that may help.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to turn this question to Maureen. How does academic writing prepare you to write in the workplace, and how is professional writing different or unique?
Yeah, I will say academic writing prepared like a huge role in helping me prep for grad school, my master's and my PhD. I didn't always appreciate all of the lab reports that I had to write, but looking back on it, getting all of that practice and leading up to the more intensive academic and professional writing of a thesis and now a dissertation and grant writing, they say practice makes perfect. And so having all of those guided assignments in undergrad was very useful. And I think that's the key word here. So in undergrad, when we would have to write labs or term papers, there would be a prompt, there would be instructions on formatting, how long the paper had to be, how many sections and spacing. Professional writing, it's not so concrete. So for example, depending on your university or your department, your thesis or dissertation could look different. Depending on what grant you're applying for, every single grant has different formatting options. You also have to include, with a lot of times with undergrad writing, we were writing about labs we had already done or projects we had already completed. Whereas in the professional world and the natural sciences, you're writing a lot of proposals. So these are projects that you want to do. So you're having to kind of change your mindset and say, okay, here's what I want to accomplish. How am I going to do it? And better yet, how am I going to convince my reader that what I want to do is important so that they'll fund my project? So I would say that the academic writing, the formatting in some senses for thesis and dissertation isn't as strict. Now, when it comes to publishing manuscripts and journal articles, those are specific from publisher to publisher. So for example, science is going to have a different formatting and publishing scheme than nature would. And those are two very popular like biology academic journals. But I would say the biggest thing is academic writing has a lot more guidelines than professional writing, and the best way to get better at professional writing is to keep reading and to read other people's work and to keep writing.
Yeah, it's so true, and it varies depending on what organization you're working for, or you know, when you take a new job, you're almost starting over in some ways. So, okay, we've got 2 questions in 5 minutes. I think we can do it 5 for before Q&A. So the first one is, what are some resources that students can consult to prepare to write professionally or improve their professional writing? And Megan, can you start that one?
So there are so many resources available. One fun resource that I like is Grammar Girl. And if you ever have any, grammar questions or any challenges with grammar, you can kind of go on that website and there's a lot of tips on that. There are plenty of daily writing tips, blogs out there that you can bookmark and visit. Another thing I think that's important for professional writing or academic writing is having a good thesaurus, being able to bookmark a thesaurus. As well as another couple other things. I think one of the things that if you're a screen reader user, this really goes back to the question we were discussing earlier about tips for improving academic writing or your paper, but I think this can play into professional writing as well. If you're using a screen reader, you might kind of get used to the same voice over and over again. So listening to your work, whether that be professional writing or academic writing, with a different voice might help. Just changing your voice on your screen reader might help kind of make you feel catch more errors. Another really popular resource that you might find useful for professional writing is The Elements of Style. It's definitely available online. I know Bookshare has it, and it's all over. It's a really popular writing book that you might find useful for professional writing. Also, I think your career services office on campus, if you have a career services office, might be a good resource to connect with if you're interested in improving your professional writing and your email writing. They might offer some options for you as well.
Thank you. Emily, how about you?
Hi, everyone. Sorry. I'm trying to navigate the basement. So there is a book that I've currently been using to help me with writing. And of course, I can't find the exact title, go figure, but it's published by the Chronicle of Higher Education. And they're these like 4 books. They're guides, I guess, on how to do different things within higher ed and academia. But one of them is specific about writing. Oh, wait, is this it? I think I found it. Hold on. Yes. The Chronicle Productivity Guide to Writing and Publishing. And it's $29 online. I can put the link in our Oh no, I lied. It's $49. But I can put the link in the chat for everyone. But it's a great book to kind of guide you on how to begin the process of professional writing and publishing, whether it's, for a journal, for a blog site, for your own papers, whatever. But it's really a great resource, and that's kind of been my go-to right now as I've been navigating the world of academic and professional writing, and with the ultimate goal of leading towards publishing. So that's been my go-to.
Thank you. And Maureen?
I would say one thing I wish I did as an undergrad more is take advantage of the workshops offered by the Career Center and the Writing Center at my university. It's never too early to go to a workshop and see if you can learn something new about writing. And those are often like resources for you right there at your university that you can use. So that's the only thing I really have to add on. And then if you have any opportunity to work for like your school's science communication blog or newspaper or anything like that, like any writing opportunities you can get in undergrad to just get that practice in is going to be really important.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move to our final question. And before that, I just want to thank everyone again for coming and for your time with us. And Abigail, thanks for throwing the websites into the chat for us. So what is your favorite writing tip or piece of advice that you can leave students with? And I'd say try to keep your answer to like a minute or less. And Maureen, we'll start with you.
As a perfectionist, no piece of writing is ever perfect in the end. So sometimes if you have a deadline, a done paper is better than an unfinished paper.
So true. When you have to turn it in, you have to turn it in. Emily.
Sometimes the best way to get started on writing something, even before your outline, is just to what I call word vomit. Either if you don't like to type, use your phone and record yourself and just talk out all of your thoughts about the topic and then go back and reorganize them. Because then that, it lets you get it all out at first, and then you can go back and reorganize your thoughts rather than starting to write and really not have a focus of where you're going in your paper. So word vomit it up. That's
so true. And Megan?
I would say don't be afraid to ask others to help you. If you need an opinion, don't be afraid to ask for help, but also know that your voice is valuable and important, and you need to sculpt your paper in the way that's going to work for you. You know your own voice best, even though you might not think you do. And use all the tools that you can as well. Use everything that you can to help your writing, your screen reader, your Braille display, your tools on campus. Fill your writing toolbox as well.
Thank you. And we'll turn it over to Abigail, who will run the Q&A for us.
Awesome. It's Abigail here again. Thank you, everybody, for sharing so far. I do want to say we already had a question in the chat that I'm going to get to first. Feel free to go ahead and plug your own questions in there, or you can raise your hand using the quick keys are on the PC, it's Alt-Y, on a Mac, it's Option-Y. If you're calling it, it's *9. And if you're on the app, I believe it's under the More section. First of all, we had someone ask about how, Maureen, you spell some, yes, so Maureen has plugged them into the chat, the spellings for several of the citation managers, and I did provide a link to Zotero. I actually never know how to pronounce that one. And I think we may be able to pull all of the resources that have been posted in the chat to share out with everybody later on. So if you're not in a place where you can view the chat right now, I think we should be able to share them with folks later on. So now I'm going to hop up. We do have one person who has their hand raised. If you'd like to go ahead, oh, hold on, let me say who your name is. So is it Davison? If you'd like to unmute.
Sorry, I accidentally got
no
lost
problem.
in the online thing. So earlier I heard, I can't remember which one of you mentioned this, but the Chronicle for Higher Education book. What was the title of that again?
Sure, this is Emily.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, the title is, oh, let me just open up my internet again. It's called The Chronicle Productivity Guide to Writing and Publishing. And I'm gonna type it in the chat as well. Guide to Writing and Publishing. And there's the link to order it.
All right, thank you. As soon as I finish writing this down, I'll put my hand down.
Oh, no worries, Davison. I actually already did it for you. Excellent. Thanks for joining us, and I'm glad you could take some resources away.
Okay, just to be clear, I lowered my hand, right?
Yes. Yeah, no
Okay.
problem. You're all set. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're glad you could join us. We don't have any other questions in the chat right now. Not sure if anybody else has questions that want to raise their hand. Okay, let's see here. Cynthia says she's looking for some key things when working with visually impaired students on outlines. It sounds like she wants some tips for working with students that might be using assistive technologies like screen readers. So maybe Megan, do you want to take that one first? I know you use a screen reader pretty frequently.
Sure. Yeah, so one thing that I think helps when you're kind of outlining or getting your ideas down, at least for me, I didn't always want to use a typical outline format because I didn't always find that to be the most accessible. So what I think might help is if you divide up your content with headings. If you use the built-in heading styles in Word, you could have a heading 1 for your main topic, and then heading 2 for your, subtopics. And if you have subtopics of your heading 2, you can use heading 3. And your screen reader user can then navigate those headings really easily. For example, if they're using JAWS, they can turn on their quick keys with Insert Z and then press the letter H to jump quickly through those headings so that they can get kind of an idea of the flow of their paper. I always think when outlining, it's kind of really important to figure out what works best for the individual who needs the outline, who is actually going to use the outline to write the paper, and so that might vary from person to person. Some people might really love the traditional outline form. Some people might just like a bunch of bullets. Some people, might want to do the heading structure or a combination of all of them. So I think, just kind of playing around and figuring out other methods may be helpful.
Thanks, Megan. And Maureen or Emily, I don't know if either of you want to add, just as your experiences as individuals with low vision, do you have anything else to add when, for someone like Cynthia, who's a writing coach working with students with vision loss?
This is Maureen. I would say one of the biggest things is I would try to type my paper with the 12-point Times New Roman MLA formatting. But the important thing to remember is if you are a low vision student, you can do that at the end. So if typing your paper in 18-point Arial makes it more comfortable for you to draft it, that's great. Then you can always go to, select all, hit 12-point Times New Roman just to see what it would look like in the format style when you turn the paper in. But I would say write the paper in the format that's most comfortable for you, and then you can always change your formatting for what the assignment requires at the end.
Maureen, you stole my response.
Great minds think alike.
I know, but I was going to say, literally, that's the first thing I do is when I open up, my processing software, whether it's Pages or Microsoft Word, I set up my page completely, right away. My preferred thing is usually 22-point font, double spaced, and I use blue text, black text on a light blue background. And as soon as I set that up, then I know I'm good to go. And I've probably written, a 6-page paper then is probably the equivalent of like 30 some pages at that point. But then at the very end, after I've done all of my editing and everything else, then I go back and I change all of the requirements to be, Arial size 12 and make sure everything's correct. And, then do my formatting that way. But definitely make sure you know what your students' preferred, I guess, learning method is when it comes to adaptations to their computer. And if not, explore it with them. Go through the different colors, go through the different backgrounds, and explore which ones feels the most calm on their eyes. Because as we all know, writing a paper is not a 15-minute process. So it's a really long process. And for those of us who have low vision, I know for me, I can only comfortably read for about 10 or 15 minutes before my eyes start to get really sore. And I need to either put on an audio format or just take a break. So adapting your computer to be able to use those features to allow you to write for longer periods of time is really important.
Thank you all. It looks like I'm probably going to butcher your name. Is it Kanak or Kanak?
It's Kanak.
Thank you.
I'm wearing a black polo, a hat with the LaSalle logo, and a dark pair of sunglasses. So I guess my question is regarding like the best way to provide feedback on papers, right? Like I know some professors really like to use the comments, some professors like to do handwritten like notes or notations, especially for grammar things. I was wondering like what's like the preferred method for like students, or like what's a solid method for low vision students? Like I know which ones I prefer as a low vision student, but I was just wondering like what else might be out there in terms of like comments or feedback.
Yeah, good question. I'm sure preferences will vary from student to student, but do any three of you want to take a start at responding? Or four? Kristen, maybe you have some insight as well.
I can start if you want. I don't have a lot of low vision perspective, but I can share some ideas if you want.
Yeah, go for it, Megan.
Okay. So one of the track changes in Microsoft Word is really a very, very common way for professors to provide feedback. And I think that can work really well. Another option that I used when I was in college, I'm not low vision, so I can't speak to how this would work from that perspective. But my professors would sometimes put comments in parentheses. So that could be another option, just in text, in the actual text of the document. But I think the most important thing is to really have a conversation with your professor, between student and professor, about how it will work best for you, because accessibility needs can vary from person to person. And so, what may be comfortable for one student might not work for another. In general, electronic is going to probably be the most accessible way for people to receive feedback. But in terms of exactly how that feedback is delivered, I think that could be a really good, conversation to have between student and professor, just to kind of decide what works best. Maybe try one way, and then if that doesn't work, try another way. So I like Abigail said, I think really it will vary, but track changes are definitely accessible, as are the Google Docs suggestions as well.
Maureen or Emily, anything to add before we wrap up?
Nothing on my end.
This is Maureen, nothing to add here. Just find what is going to work best for the student and for the person giving the feedback.
Great. Yeah, I think one acronym that I love as someone with a disability and working with others with disabilities is ATP, Ask the Person. Obviously, all the things we've shared today are things that each person has figured out that work for them in writing. And so I think you're on a good start to, considering other ways of doing it, and just, asking the professor or student. Great. Well, we are near time here. If you want to reach out to us or get in touch, you can email us at csp@learningally.org. And our website is collegesuccess, the letters bvi.org. And this webinar was recorded, so it'll be going up on our YouTube channel shortly. And we will, as I said, try to get some of these wonderful resources that were shared in the chat out to all of you attendees. So thank you for joining. Thank you to Maureen, Emily, and Megan, and to my colleagues, Kristen and Katie. Hope you all stay safe and be well.
Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all.
Thank you.